Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It's Good News Tuesday, so let's find out what great things are happening out there while the rest of the world is on fire. Let's go ahead and start with our headlines. Today on Before Coffee. If we all cycled like the Dutch, CO2 emissions would drop by 690 million tons.
On Good News, on Good Tuesday, good news! The Supreme Court now has an ethics program.
Dying for change. Ireland stalled plans to open a safe injecting facility for drug users.
And if you don't like your school board because they're banning books, good news! You can run for your school board and throw them out.
Venice restoration of fading Banksy masterpiece sparks anger among artists.
And those stories and more on what is today is National Pickle Day, November 14th, 2023 on Before Coffee.
Okay, first news story. This is from Euronews Green and Charlotte Elton. If everybody cycled like the Dutch, we could offset the UK or Australia's entire carbon footprint. A study from the University of Southern Denmark, published by Communications Earth and Environmental Journal, has urged people to saddle up like they do in the Netherlands. Dutch people cycle on an average of 2.6 kilometers each day. If this pattern were replicated worldwide, the study suggests annual global carbon emissions would drop by 686 million tons. This mammoth figure exceeds the entire carbon footprint of most countries, including the UK, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. The significant untapped climate and health benefits of increasing bicycle use suggest an urgent need to promote sustainable bicycle use, the authors conclude. Of course, they say that they're from Denmark, which is the second most bicycled up country in the world, next to the Netherlands, which is number 1. There are plenty of reasons to get on a bike. On the individual level, it's a great way to stay fit and healthy, staving off chronic diseases associated with sedentary lifestyles. People who cycle to work have a 45% lower risk of developing cancer and a 46% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. But it's not just good for you, it's great for the environment too. The transport sector accounts for a quarter of global fuel-related greenhouse gas emissions, with half coming from private vehicles, including passengers, cars, and trucks. Cars also contribute to the air pollution, clogging the air with toxic chemicals and gases. According to UK climate organization Hubbub, 50% of the journeys we take each day are less than 3.2 kilometers long, meaning that we could feasibly be swapped out for bike rides. According to a new study, bike production has ballooned over 60 years. 123 million bikes, 123 million bikes, were produced in 2015, up from 20.7 million bikes in 1962. But this doesn't mean that more people are cycling as a proportion of the global population. Bike journeys account for just 5% of daily trips worldwide. The study authors recognize that not everyone lives in a cycle-friendly place, but call for an urgent expansion of cycling infrastructure worldwide. Lessons learned from successful experience in countries like Denmark and Netherlands, particularly on the city level such as Copenhagen and Amsterdam, would be essential, they write. These include, but are not limited to, for example, proper bicycle lanes planning and construction, pro-bicycle education, and culture and policies to discourage car use through tax. That's right, tax them and then they don't use their cars. That is definitely something they do here in the Netherlands. You get taxed if you own a car, doesn't matter what. And you get taxed even more if it's a heavy car. So,
Tax in America too.
If you have, I don't know why, but there's people in my village even who are driving around freaking Ford F-150s, and I'm like, wow, they're paying out of the ass to have that car. Because there's no reason for it. What are they using it for? They don't use it for what it's for. Let me tell you, nobody uses trucks for actually putting stuff in the back of the bed and driving it a long distance. Nobody does that. Never seen it. Never. Anyways, that's my short and sweet story about how everyone get on a bike, go buy a bike. If you're traveling less than 2.3 kilometers, which is, I don't know, 3 miles or something, That's not right. I'm terrible at converging, but you don't need to drive there. You can just bike there. It's gonna be okay. Anyways, your story.
0.6 miles to kilometer.
Yeah, exactly. 6 miles. You can do it. I believe in you. I can do it, and I have asthma, so.
Yeah, 10 kilometers to 6 miles. Yeah. Even in what's the latitude there? About 60, right? Of course, you get the jet stream, but you still don't have.
I thought we were 14.
You don't have warm winters. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Yeah, it's freezing in both Copenhagen and Amsterdam, and people still go on their bikes. That's true.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Copenhagen's even colder. In Good Tuesday, this is from the Supreme Court, and the headline says, this is from NBC, Jessica Levinson. The Supreme Court takes an overdue half step toward accountability. The Supreme Court, the announcement Monday that the U.S. Supreme Court, for the first time ever, has adopted a code of conduct. First time ever, think about this. The first time ever has adopted a code of conduct. They're the Supreme Court. When they say there's this is my editorial at the beginning, by the way. When they say there's checks and balances in the government, there are no checks on the Supreme Court. Even their little ethics rules, they're the only one that are going to go enforce them. You know, who's going to punish them? Nobody. Okay, so here's their announcement. The announcement Monday that the U.S. Supreme Court, for the first time ever, has adopted a code of conduct comes after months, if not years, of criticism of the court. The announcement shows that public pressure matters, but the fact that the code has no enforcement mechanism demonstrates that, at least for now, public pressure pushed the justice only so far. The fact that the code is... To be sure, the court wouldn't have adopted the code were it not for the drip of ethics scandals facing current members, Justice Clarence Thomas especially. As ProPublica reported, Republican megadonor Harlan Crow funded Thomas's luxury trips, tuition for his great-nephew, purchase of his mother's house, and similarly, ProPublica reported that the hedge fund billionaire Paul Singer helped fund a 2008 trip Justice Samuel Alito took to Alaska. In a 2014 case, which Alito took part in, involved a dispute in Singer's hedge fund that had with Argentina. And just this year, the Associated Press reported that Justice Sonia Sotomayor's court staff essentially strong-armed schools and libraries into purchasing her book. So this crosses party lines. Let's also be clear that the court did not want to do this. Not that anybody in the Supreme Court has a party, but let's face it, it's become politicized. Basically since, I would say Clarence Thomas. Let's also be clear that the court did not want to do this. In a 158-word statement of the court that precedes its new code, the tone of the court adopts a right off the bat is that this is all our fault. It's our fault, the statement suggests, for being so confused that they think just because they're the only 9 federal judges in the country not suggested to being code of conduct, some act as if they're not subject to a binding code of conduct. That statement of the court is really just a defensive introduction to what follows. Within that 158-word section, the word misunderstanding, meaning, or so-called misunderstanding appears twice. It's our fault, the statement says, for having the misunderstanding that Supreme Court justices regard themselves as unrestricted by any ethics rules. This appears to be a bit of a straw man because the justices were not, in fact, restricted by the same ethics rules as other federal judges. What the justices are really trying to argue is that it's our fault for thinking they act like they're not subject to a binding code of ethics. But here again, reality gets in the way. The reality is that the justices have accepted and at times have failed to disclose gifts from donors, including at least one with a business before the court. If the code of conduct applied to justices, this behavior would raise serious concerns. The court also went to pains to tell us that While we, the public, forced it into doing this, for the most part, these rules and principles are not new. According to the court, it has always been guided by the equivalent of common law ethics rules, the code of conduct that applies to every other federal judge in this country, ethics advisory opinions, and historic practice. In case we miss it the first time, the court then reminds us that the code is largely just a codification of principles that we have long regarded as governing our conduct. The court is right. There isn't much new here. Justices are committing themselves to conduct themselves so that the parties before them and the public at large think they are getting a fair shake. The new code includes 5 canons, including cautions to avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety. Outside activities that are inconsistent with the obligations of the judicial office and political activities. The code includes specific guidance for justice about how to adhere to it. Perhaps the biggest tell here is that the court was forced, kicking and screaming, to give us something that hasn't given us much of anything. There is no enforcement mechanism for this code of conduct. By definition, creating an enforcement mechanism for a code of conduct that applies to the highest judges in the land can raise some practical concerns. But legally speaking, it seems to be entirely permissible for the Supreme Court itself to appoint an Article 3 Inspection General to ensure that the code is followed. Legal questions related to the separation of powers would arise if Congress, not the court, created a code and its enforcement mechanism. Perhaps the biggest tell here is that the court was forced kicking. I heard other thing repeating itself. In sum, what we have here is a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court that is, more than anything else, a tacit acknowledgement that the court's approval rating is near an all-time low. It is impossible to disentangle the lack of faith in the court from the ethics scandals plaguing the court. And it's so easy to see why the court thinks a code of ethics is just what the doctor ordered. But without an enforcement mechanism, what we have today is almost identical to what we had yesterday. An assurance by the court that justices will act according to certain ethical standards. It's the argument that the court has already been doing this. That's the real LOL. And that is from Jessica Levinson, a professor of Loyola Law School, is the host of Passing Judgment podcast. She was also director of Public Service Institute at Loyola Law School, director of Loyola's Journalist Law School, and former president of Los Angeles Ethics Commission. Your story.
I have to agree with that statement there about, oh great, we have some codes. And we're going to follow them? I guess, I don't know. You'd think people who are sworn to be... Yeah, you'd think people who are sworn to be justices or whatever would have some sort of, like, high morality, you know. But only for other people, not for themselves. They can do whatever they want.
You got this here fancy piece of parchment here that says we is ethical.
I thought they would, you know, swore themselves on their fancy papers, but I guess not.
Meanwhile, they've been breaking the law the whole time by taking gifts and not declaring them as
They have lost all their integrity. 100% of their integrity is gone.
Let's prosecute them for tax evasion is what we ought to do. Go ahead.
In Ireland's Irish news, they were planning on opening safe injecting facilities for drug users, but now they've had to stall their plans. This is from Aisling Redden on Euronews. The country was reported as having the 3rd highest overdose death rate in Europe by European Union's drug agency in 2020, with 409 deaths that year, 70% of which involved opioids. With the 3rd highest overdose death rate in Europe, Ireland is trying to change its approach to drugs. But the country's first medically supervised injection facility, or MSIF, which experts say has the potential to save lives, remains unopened over a decade since it was first proposed. On a blustery November's day in Dublin, small groups of people linger near the entrance to Merchants Quay, Ireland, as they wait for the Riverbank Centre to reopen for its afternoon service. MQI, or Merchants Quay Ireland, is one of the several homelessness and addictions charities in the inner city area and was selected by Ireland's Health Service Executive in 2018 to trial an injection facility for 18 months. With illicit drug use and associated harms rising across the country in recent years, the injection facility could be a revolutionary approach to problematic drug use in a once conservative Ireland. The country was reported to having a third highest overdose death rate in Europe by European Union's drug agency in 2020. So what happened? Inside a medically supervised injection facility, users can take illegal drugs such as cocaine and heroin under the supervision of medical staff. It gives them access to clean needles and other supplies, with medical staff on hand, and also acts as a gateway for getting help to fight the addiction. You can't help people recover if they're not alive, says Dr. Jo Hannah Ivers, a professor academic working at addiction issues at Dublin's Trinity College. Proponents of the MSIF argue that an injecting facility is there for the most vulnerable intravenous users who will use drugs whether they are safe or not. The MSIF, they say, will not only reduce deaths and other drug-related harm, but will help build critical relationships between MQIs, medically trained staff, and users to support them in seeking treatment. You have to start with harm reduction, says Dr. Ivers. Newly appointed as the head of the MQI over 30 years' work in Irish prison service, Eddie Mullins says that seeing through the implementation of the MSIF is his number one priority. Unless there's a major blockage from somewhere along the line, there's no reason we will not open for the 1st of September 2024, said Mullins. That's our objective, and I remain committed to that because I think we can do it, he tells Euronews. Mullins insists the government and health authorities are very supportive of the initiative. I have to give credit where credit is due. My experience of the last 8 years has been nothing but positive, Mullins says after meeting with Ireland Minister for National Drug Strategy, Hildegarda Naughton, who offered her full support to his project. We used to say there are no votes in prison, and there are also very few votes among chronic drug users, he says. The general commitment to people on the margins is probably less than the other sectors of society. The MSIF is one of those initiatives that people are holding their breath on because it's very pioneering in many ways for a country like Ireland. In response to a request for comment on the delays, Minister Naughton's office said that since December 2022, the HSE and MQI have been developing plans to progress the establishment of the facility, and the establishment of the facility remains a ministerial priority. The delays to the facility opening have caused many to blame a lack of political will, despite the parties across the board voicing their support. I feel hopeful that the MSIF will open, but I'm not sure that it will happen in the lifetime of the current government, says Gary Gannon, Social Democrats TD for Dublin Central, adding that he believes the government may shelve the project and leave it for the next administration to take up. A general election expected in the next 18 months. Odan Riodan, which I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, I do not know Irish, Gaelic, a Labour TD and former Minister of National Drug Strategy who pushed through the 2015 bill for a safe injection facility, points out that stigma remains a significant obstacle to the MSIF or any broader changes to drug policy. I, as a politician, will get much further in my political career if I say things like tough on drugs, zero tolerance, more guards, police, says O'Riordan. That's music to the ears of the average voter. I don't think so. I think that's the music to the ears of populists. I don't think the average viewer gives a shit about drug use. But that's my generation doesn't care. They're like, that's their problem. They're drug users, you know? If they need help, go. I don't see the problem with me, why it affects my life. But I guess in Ireland, stigma against drug users is still very widespread, leading to policies that continue to dehumanize those with addiction. It's been really extremely disappointing for me that almost 8 years after the government decided to legislate for it, it's still not open, he says, and as a result, we've lost lives. There's ongoing opposition to the drug-safe injection facility from local businesses and residents and the local primary school, which previously blocked its construction. For MQI, Mullins says that addressing the concerns of locals remains the main obstacle. Our community and stakeholders and neighbors will never love the facility, but we will be able to coexist and minimize the impact, he says. Locals are open about their fears of the injection facility on their doorstep, while business representatives declined to comment on the proposed September opening. Locals did not hesitate to voice their opposition. A manager at the Brazen Head, a pub particularly popular with tourists, said illicit drug use in the area is a major problem, with people using the pub's entranceway to consume. I do not have a clue how to fix it. let them go to the place they're allowed to do it at. They're not in the way. They're in a building instead of in front of your business. That's how you fix it. They've literally given you the way to fix it. But it's definitely not a good idea to open an injection facility right beside a school in the middle of a tourist area, he told Euronews. I don't know how to fix it. The solution you've given me is not good enough. That's basically what he's saying. The continued opposition is something politician Gary Gannon believes should not stand in the way of the MSIF's opening. Hearing community voices is important, but there's also medical best practice that needs to be taken into consideration. People have any number of years to learn. Now we need to get on with it. I don't want to listen to these idiots. Just open the damn facility. That's what I say. Really doesn't affect my life if people are just injecting drugs safely and then getting help so that they're no longer addicted. Because people don't just like find some heroin on the street and go, "Ooh, what is this?" Somebody introduces it to them. You know, they get to a place where they need to self-medicate, and that's their drug of choice. Okay, so
well, in this world,
it's mental.
In this world, they're introduced to heroin by synthetic heroin by their physician.
Exactly. So
yeah,
it's up to the doctors to fix their own problem, I guess.
Tell me the difference between a heroin addict and a diabetic. There's no difference.
Yeah.
Now, they just got a chemical that their brain can't produce anymore, and they need something injected into their veins to make them live.
Yeah.
And nobody gives a shit if a diabetic does it, even though he's been sugar his whole life. Now he's diabetic. Now it's like, oh, give him treatment. He's had too many donuts. Okay.
Yeah, sugar is a drug, 100%. Your story.
Yeah, definitely. Sugar's a drug. People get hooked on it, and they cannot produce insulin anymore. And they got to inject themselves. Let's put them in parks and make them into freaks. Look, it's the freak diabetes park. Look at them. Don't touch them. Don't look at them. They got diabetes. That's what it would be. Right? Same thing. My little diatribe. More good news today. Hey! The news from last week's election was, yes, the pro-abortion people, or the so-called pro-life people lost. The other news is the book banners lost. And we have two little stories. Moms for Liberty falls flat in the face in school board races. This is a short little one. Another story about Pennsylvania school board. The first one's from New Republic, writer Tori Otten. Iowa chapters of the far-right group Moms for Liberty endorsed 13 candidates for school board across the state. Only one was elected. The Tuesday's loss in the stinging rebuke of Moms for Liberty, a parental rights organization that the Southern Poverty Law Center designated as an extremist group. What happened in Iowa mimics similar defeats suffered by the group and by Republicans in general throughout the U.S. In Iowa, think about this, Iowa, which keeps voting Republican, the only Moms for Liberty candidate who won was Nathan Gibson, who was elected school director for an Interstate 35 district, a rural district with fewer than 1,000 students. So 1,000 students in Iowa are going to be told the wrong history. Moms for Liberty was founded in 2021 to push back against COVID-19 restrictions in schools. It has since expanded to opposing classes on diversity, curbing the rights of LGBTQ students, and banning books. But on Tuesday, voters across the country pushed back on the Moms for Liberty agenda. The organization endorsed more than 130 candidates across the country. A vast majority of them lost, with some failing to get more than a single-digit support. All four Moms for Liberty-backed candidates in Minnesota lost, as did all four in Washington State. The group endorsed 19 candidates for school boards in New Jersey, but only 4 won. Moms for Liberty backed 25 candidates for Ohio, but just 5 were elected. And of the 6 candidates the group endorsed in Virginia, only 1 won the race. Voters issued similar rebukes to the Republican Party in general. Ohioans also voted overwhelmingly Tuesday to enshrine abortion protections in the state constitution, despite the state GOP making multiple desperate attempts to prevent such an outcome. In Virginia, Democrats took control of both the state house and the Senate in a stunning upset. And we go to this Pennsylvania school board story, which is on NPR. Emily Rizzo. 3 of the newly elected Democratic school board members will be replacing Republicans. Let's see, I got to start the beginning of the story. Let's do that. 5 Democratic Central Bucks School District candidates. Okay, that's for a picture. Megan Budin's family was considering moving if their Pennsylvania school district didn't change course. She normally isn't politically active, she said, but felt compelled to volunteer when a slate of Democrats launched bids to take back their school board in Central Bucks School District just north of Philadelphia. Central Bucks is well known for both statewide and nationally for heated board meetings over masks and pride flags, policies banning certain books, directives to not use students' preferred names and pronouns, accusation of discrimination against LGBTQ students have also led to an ongoing investigation by the U.S. Department of Education. I couldn't have my kids in a school district where these kinds of things are happening, Budin said. Standing at the Bucks County Democratic headquarters on election night, Budin's, is it Budin or Budden? I think it's Budden, B-U-D-D-N. Budden sobbed when the results rolled in. Democrats took all 5 seats up for election. The room erupted in cheers. Friends, neighbors, and strangers hugged. It was very moving, a very joyous feeling for everyone, and a sense of relief. If there was a question about whether the conservative-led school board policies reflected the will of the local community, Tuesday's election may have provided the answer. 3 of the newly elected Democratic school board members will replace Republicans, including the board president, who helped set a right-wing agenda that aligned with national conservative movements around education. Voters effectively flipped the board from majority Republican to majority Democratic. The Republicans also lost majority control of the school districts in Iowa, Virginia, and historically conservative district neighboring Central Bucks. Central Bucks School District is the 3rd largest in Pennsylvania with more than 17,000 students. It is also a politically mixed swing county. I wasn't supposed to win, said Democratic candidate Heather Reynolds, who beat board's current president and sole Republican incumbent in the race. Reynolds' new one seat represents a part of the district that's more red than others, she said. I think that the community has had enough. They've seen what this former board member has done, and they said no more. We deserve better as a district, as a community. This isn't not who we are. Reynolds said residents and parents were exhausted by the chaos that had become a normal part of the monthly school board meetings. Fiscal responsibility was also high in their list of concerns, he said. In July, the board increased Superintendent Abe Lockabau's salary by almost 40%, making the 2nd highest paid superintendent in the state after Philadelphia. Lockabau had stood by the board's controversial policies even as the district spent at least $1 million on a law firm, $1 million on a law firm, following claims of discrimination and more than $140,000 on public relations firm that managed media requests, among other things. NPR reached out to Central Bucks Republican board candidates for comment. Some declined to be interviewed and others did not respond. Only one candidate was willing to go on record, Glenn Schlafel, who said the results were disappointing. We put a lot of work into trying to get a successful outcome and it didn't go our way. Schlafel believes the board majority might get thrown under the bus after the accusations of discriminations, and he doesn't think it is fair to characterize their decisions around books as a book ban. He said the books the current board removed from the libraries were highly graphic and sexual in nature, absolutely disgusting. There's no place for that in our schools. Republican candidate Steve Moss told the Delaware Valley Journal, the only winners in Tuesday's election are the private schools, who will have their enrollment skyrocket in the next few years when parents see what policies are coming to our district. Well, if you can afford private school there, put your kids in private school there. There's nobody making you put your kid in public school. Take your money, go somewhere else. Across the country, the school board campaign funding seems to be on the rise. Republicans had one big donor, and Democrats received more individual donations. In 2018, a survey by the National School Board Association reported 75% of elected officials spent less than $1,000 on their campaign. But this election cycle, Central Bucks candidate raised $600,000 combined as of Thursday, according to campaign finance records. That's a lot for a school board election. Local venture capitalist Paul Martino bankrolled the Republican campaigns and donated a majority of their funding. $239,000 as of the $279,000 came from one person on the Republican side. There's democracy. One guy against everybody else, basically. Martino's wife, Ariadne Martino, ran for the board as Republican this year, spent a total of $500,000 on school board races across Pennsylvania in 2021. He also contributed $40,000 to Stop Bucks Extremism PAC. During the campaign, the PAC mailed literature to district homes with excerpts from the often targeted books, Gender Queer and This Book is Gay. The mailer included the message, extreme Central Bucks Democrats are fighting to keep these books in our middle school and high school libraries. Request an early vote ballot to protect our children. Protect your children from information. In total, the Democrats raised over $315,000. The Democrats' PAC Neighbors United raised over $174,000. The lowest donation came from Turnbucks Blue, a local PAC that supports Democrats throughout the country, and Pennsylvania State Education Association. So, money from groups, PACs. Much of the Democrats' funding came from smaller individual donations between $50 and $250. Each candidate also had their own PAC. We knew what Martino spent the last time, so we had to be prepared to respond to that, said Karen Smith, a Democrat who won a race as an incumbent. Martino declined NPR's request for comment. So this goes on a little bit more, but you get the gist of it. If you don't like the way things are going and you got time on your hands, you don't have a full-time job that eats up all of your time, you can run for the school board. It's not even a full-time job. It's a part-time job. And apparently they pay you for it. So hey, because it looks like this one dude is getting a really, really sweet deal. Your story.
He was getting a sweet deal. He was getting a
well, the
sweet
guy
deal.
who was the head book banner got this huge boost to the pay.
Yeah. Okay.
Head book banner.
In culture news, this is from Lucy Turnabize. Italian Ministry of Culture wants to restore work by Banksy, but some artists argue it should be allowed to disappear naturally. Painted on the wall of an abandoned Venetian palace, Banksy's 2019 Biennale of Contemporary Art Creation, The Migrant Child, has become a tourist attraction in the city of Canals. However, due to humidity and salt, the artwork depicting a child wearing a life jacket and holding a torch is slowly fading away. Serving as a commentary on the global refugee crisis, but also raising questions about the transient nature of art, this work is also at the center of an increasingly bitter battle over its restoration. In a bid to save it, the owner of the building requested the Soprintendenza dei Beni Culturali, or Superintendents of Cultural Heritage, to intervene, but the body responsible for preserving of cultural heritage said it wasn't qualified to deal with such a recent piece. The mayor of the city, Luigi Burgano, and the president of the Veneto region, Luca Zai, reached out to Vittorio Sagrabi, the undersecretary of culture in Giorgio Meloni's government, for help. The latter took upon himself to restore the work known as The Migrant Child through private funding by an Italian bank, and it sparked anger amongst local architectural and artistic communities. Yeah, freaking some rich bank guy restored it? Boo! At least bring a street artist in or something. The Rio Novo neighborhood, where the stencil is located, is one of the busiest in the city, connecting the railway station to the Grand Canal. The passage of motorboats causes what Venetians call moto ondoso, waves that contribute to the erosion of the lagoon. This phenomenon is considered a major emergency by UNESCO due to its devastating effects on the environment and the city's historical infrastructure. The lower part of Venetian palaces, in contact with the water, is referred to in architecture as the surface of sacrifice, explains Monica Gambrotto, a Venetian tour guide. It is typically left to bare brick, unpainted, to prevent canal water from rising and being absorbed by the covering. The proposal by Italy's Undersecretary for Culture has also been dismissed by local artists. Banksy was no fool. He was fully aware that this waterside creation wasn't meant to endure. Restoring it goes against the grain, said Everine, an artist known for stenciled characters reminiscent of Banksy style. He added, I've experienced having one of my own pieces restored with the best intentions, and despite the heartfelt gesture, the end result was less than desirable. If I were ever asked to alter a fellow artist's work, I would decline unless I had their explicit consent. Rosanna Carriere, an activist from Mi Reconoce Association, collaborating with the professionals in the cultural sector, emphasized the significance of engaging key stakeholders in their decisions. Prior to initiating any restoration efforts, it's imperative to consult both the artist and the local community. Otherwise, it risks becoming a top-down endeavor capitalizing on Banksy's fame, she stressed. When approached by Uranus Culture, Sagabi suggested the work is now property of the local authorities. I have no intention of consulting the artist. The artworks were created illegally, and we can do as we please with it. At the same time, he acknowledged that the value of the artwork, stating, many tourists photograph it, so it has significant sociological value. Sagabi added that the restoration will be entrusted to Federico Borgonghi, who has previously carried out rescue operations for a Banksy stencil in Bristol. Monica Gambrato, a local tourist guide, has witnessed the artist's impact on the Venetian art scene. Her agency, Guided Tours in Venice, has even curated a dedicated tour to showcase Banksy's influence on the iconic city. The idea is to offer a leisurely stroll to uncover the world of street art in Venice. Some artworks have already vanished, such as those created by Blub, anonymous street artist from Florence. These pieces, being on paper, are more susceptible to tearing or vandalism. Monica Gambriotto explains, while our dedicated street art tour is not in high demand, it is more common for tourists to request to include Banksy in a customized tour. She stressed the complexity of the decision-making process in regard to restoration based on contradictions. In the past, nearly all Venetian palaces were adorned for fresco, which over time have naturally faded away. It's part of the city's historical evolution. On the flip side, any act of transient vandalism, like what street art often represents, becomes a historical testament. In this regard, Banksy's work remains an important document even today. Critics of restoration point out that Venice has more urgent issues in needing of funding. Matteo Pandolfo, a member of the Venetian Architects Association, said, "This palace has been empty for decades, although the city faces a housing shortage. We should be concerned about Venice's delicate balance disruption by tourism, rather than the restoration of a work created to vanish," agreed Rosanna Carriere. "We must consider the issues of safeguarding artworks in general. The ministry lacks personnel, especially art historians, to ensure the preservation and accessibility of artworks. Drawing attention to the migrant child empties the work of its social and political meaning," she added. So, stop trying to fix a graffiti piece and actually go fix real art, I guess, is what that guy is saying. I kind of agree. I kind of want to hear Banksy's opinion. I'm sure his opinion is the one already shared in here, which is...
Or she.
Let it go, because he's constantly destroying his own artwork.
Or she.
Okay.
Nobody knows who Banksy is.
I've seen Banksy's face.
Oh, okay.
Not his face, but like... I mean, it could be a woman, but it's very... How Banksy stands is very man. Yeah. That's all. Maybe it's somebody else. It's somebody else pretending to be Banksy. Either way, Banksy, they probably have the same opinion, which is, yeah, let it disappear. Banksy's always destroying their own artwork all the time. So,
yeah,
guess we'll see what happens, if it's going to be a protest or they're just going to let it happen. I have no idea.
My personal opinion is let it fade.
Let it fade, let it fade.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, opera's art. It happens one time and it's over. A rock concert's art. It happens one time. You can record it, right? Just like you can take a picture of a building. So let it fade. Plus, I was just thinking, who's winning at life more than Banksy, right?
Yeah.
You get the vandalized buildings. People don't ever paint over it, and they come in to praise it.
Yeah.
And you're basically doing vandalization, and nobody knows who you are still. Okay, and you're world famous. You're winning in life if you're Banksy. Congratulations, 10,000th day in a row.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Banksy
Yeah.
doesn't have opinions either, because Banksy has many times been like, hey, I don't like that you're doing a symposium on my artwork. You didn't tell me you're doing that, so you're making a bunch of money off of my artwork, you know?
If I'm an architect and Banksy spray paints my building, I might be pissed off that he ruined my architecture.
Yeah.
Do I get a say? No, I don't. Why? I have no idea. All right. I guess this day in history. 1305, Clement V was crowned pope, becoming the first of the Avignon popes, if you know what that means. I don't. 1851, Harper's Brothers published Herman Melville's masterpiece, Moby Dick. Call Me Ishmael. In 1885, Serbo-Bulgarian War began with Serbian King Milan Obrenović IV declared war on Bulgaria. And 1889, American journalist Nellie Bay began her around-the-world race against the record of Phileas Fogg, hero of the Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. She completed the journey in slightly more than 72 days, but she did not write a book about it. Well, maybe she did, but these guys aren't telling us. 1915, this day, educator, reformer, and first president and principal developer of the Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, not Tuskegee University, Booker T. Washington. Okay, let's just say Booker T. Washington died on this day at the age of 59. If you don't know who Booker T. Washington is, that's who he was. He's a black educator. 1935, King Hussein, whose reign marked the shaping of modern Kingdom of Jordan, was born. 1948, Prince Charles, heir apparent to the British throne, the child of Elizabeth II, and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, was born. Of course, he's now known as King Charles, so they need to update their thing here. 1960, six-year-old Ruby Bridges began attending William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans, becoming the youngest of a group of African-American students to integrate schools in the American South. So Ruby was 6 in 1960. She's around 70 now. So there you go. 1969, Apollo 12 was launched, carrying a crew of Charles Conrad Jr., Richard F. Gordon Jr., and Alan Bean. 5 days later, the mission made the second landing on the moon. Nobody knows any of their names. They were the second crew to go to the moon. Nobody knows their name. Wow. What a world. In 1972, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed above 1,000 for the first time in this day. In 2002, chosen to succeed Richard Gephardt as leader of the Democratic Party in the U.S. Representatives, Nancy Pelosi of California became the first woman to be named leader of either party in either house of Congress. In 2014, American politician Jane Byrne, who was the first woman to serve as mayor of Chicago, died at the age of 81. Jane Byrne, the coolest mayor of Chicago. Why is she the coolest mayor of Chicago? Because she let them film the Blues Brothers in downtown Chicago. She will always be great for that one reason. I don't care what else she did. She just let them pile car wreck upon car wreck in downtown Chicago on one Saturday afternoon, I think it was. In this featured event in history, in 1962, Eritrea made a province of the Ethiopian Empire. On this day in 1962, the Ethiopian Parliament in the Eritrean Assembly voted unanimously for the abolition of Eritrea's federal status, making it a simple province of the Ethiopian Empire. Eritrea, that's how you pronounce it apparently, which I've never had to do before. Now I have to go visit. Feature biography, Boutros Ghali, Egyptian statesman and Secretary General of the United Nations. It's his birthday today. He was born on November 14th, 1922 in Cairo, Egypt. Also died in Cairo, Egypt on February 16th, 2016 at the age of 93. Other birthdays, Claude Monet, French painter. Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister of India, was born this day in 1889. Joseph McCarthy, United States Senator and famous communist hunter, born in 1908. Charles III, King of the United Kingdom, was born. We already covered that. And Condoleezza Rice was born this day, also in 1954. National Day Calendar. We've already covered the National Pickle Day. And no, I don't want a pickle. I just want to ride my motorcycle. Nobody gets that joke. That's cool. National Spicy Guacamole Day, November 14th. And it's World Diabetes Day. We were just talking about diabetes. What a coincidence. And it's National Family PJ today. Oh, what an adorable picture of the adorable family with the adorable pajamas on they got here. Ooh, it just melts your heart. And it's National Seatbelt. Wear them seatbelts, everybody. Back to you.
Wear those seatbelts, everyone. Okay. Let me not start music. That would be nice. I just pressed the play button on my music by accident. Okay. This has been Allison here from the Netherlands. It is Good News Tuesday, so also look for some good news around you, because don't get too bogged down by doom scrolling on Twitter or through your YouTube shorts. You don't have to watch all that stuff. You can look outside and say, wow, look at those kids having fun outside. Or, isn't it beautiful when it rains through the trees? Tomorrow will be Wacky and Weird Wednesday, so look forward to what weird stuff's going on in the world, and we'll see you then.
And this is Roger. Life is full of news, and we collect it all and sort out the bullshit and give you the stuff we feel like presenting. So that's our little system here. So don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our channels, because we've had to fire all of our writing staff and start over. So we need money for that. Send donations, send pie. We don't care. Anyway, this is today's news for November 14th, 2023 edition of Before Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.